I never thought a small bump between two grocery carts would change the rest of my life. At 62, you stop believing in moments like that. You stop expecting anything new. But that day, standing in the coffee aisle, apologizing to a stranger, something quietly shifted without me realizing it yet. My name is Frank. I am 62 years old, retired, and living a life I once thought was complete. I spend most of my days in the same small house my wife and I built together more than 30 years ago. It sits on the edge of town, nothing special, but it holds everything we ever were. I have lived here alone for 10 years now, ever since she passed. Some days are peaceful. Some days are just empty. I wake up early out of habit. I worked for the same manufacturing company for 35 years. Same building. Same routine. When I retired, I thought I would finally relax. What no one tells you is how quiet life becomes when you stop being needed every day. So, I keep myself busy. I fix the fence. I tighten loose screws. I reorganize the garage just to give my hands something to do. My kids visit when they can. My son lives nearby with his wife and 2 kids. My daughter lives in Colorado, so I see her less. When the grandkids are here, the house feels alive again. Their laughter fills the hallway, and for a moment, it feels like my wife is still somewhere nearby, smiling at the noise. She used to say that laughter was what made a house a home. I met her when I was fresh out of the Army. She wore a green dress at a community dance and laughed at how badly I moved. I fell in love right there. We married within a year and built a life brick by brick. We had struggles, but I never doubted us. Not once. Then she got sick. Pancreatic cancer. It came fast and hard. We fought it with everything we had. Appointments, treatments, long nights. She passed away in the bedroom we painted together. Losing her nearly broke me, but time softens even the sharpest pain. It never disappears. You just learn how to carry it. After that, I made peace with being done. Romance felt like something meant for younger people. I enjoyed my routines. Coffee on the porch, morning paper, fixing things for neighbors. I was not unhappy. I thought I had lived my full story. Then one ordinary afternoon, I went to the grocery store for paper towels and dinner. I was turning into the coffee aisle when my cart lightly tapped another one. I apologized right away and reached out as if that would fix it. She turned around, smiling. She told me it was fine and laughed. That laugh caught me off guard. She looked to be in her late 40s, natural, calm, no ring on her finger. I noticed that without meaning to. I introduced myself and joked about being a reckless driver. She laughed again and told me her name was Marissa. It was nothing dramatic. No music, no sparks. Just 2 strangers standing by overpriced coffee. Before I could talk myself out of it, I asked if I could buy her a coffee as an apology. She looked at me for a moment, then smiled and agreed. We sat at a small counter near the front of the store. She ordered a fancy hazelnut drink. I stuck with black coffee. We talked easily about work, family, and life. She told me she worked in finance and had never married or had kids. She said she liked her life even if it did not look like everyone else's. There was something kind about the way she listened. When we finished, we stood up and said goodbye. No phone numbers, no plans, just a nice meeting. We walked away, and I assumed that was the end of it. But it wasn't. For weeks I thought about her. Not in a romantic way, at least that is what I told myself. I liked how present she felt, how calm. I started going to that same store more often, pretending I needed things I did not. I told myself I liked their produce better. Life went on. My son came over to help fix the shed. My granddaughter drew chalk hearts on the driveway. I smiled, but something felt unfinished. Then one afternoon, I heard her voice behind me in the frozen food section. She joked about me stalking her. We laughed like old friends. She told me I still owed her a coffee. This time, she suggested a small cafe nearby. I followed her there and found her already waiting by the window. The place was warm and quiet. We talked longer, deeper, about work, retirement, and feeling tired of running without knowing why. Before we left, I asked for her number. She smiled and handed me her phone, teasing me for taking so long. She hugged me before she left, and that hug stayed with me. We started texting and meeting for coffee and walks. Nothing heavy, nothing rushed. Somewhere along the way, I realized I was falling for her. Slowly, honestly. And it scared me more than anything had in years. After that second coffee, seeing Marissa became part of my week without either of us ever saying it out loud. We did not call them dates. We just met. Sometimes for coffee, sometimes for a walk near the lake, sometimes just sitting on a bench watching people pass by. It felt easy, natural, like something that had always been there, and I had just noticed it late. We talked about small things at first. Books she liked. Old movies I still watched on Sunday afternoons. She laughed when I told her how I fixed the same loose cabinet door 3 times because I kept forgetting which screw was stripped. I liked the sound of her laugh. It stayed with me long after we said goodbye. I did not tell anyone about her. Not my kids. Not my friends. Not because I was hiding anything, but because I did not know what this was yet. I was afraid to name it. Afraid that saying it out loud would make it disappear. But something had changed in me. I caught myself smiling when my phone buzzed. Sleeping better. Shaving more often. I even pulled out an old bottle of cologne I had not touched in years. It surprised me how quickly a person can feel alive again without realizing they were numb before. One afternoon after a walk, Marissa stopped and looked at me differently. She said I made her feel calm. That I made the world slow down when she was with me. I did not know how to answer that. I just nodded like an idiot. Inside, my heart felt like it was trying to escape my chest. That night, sitting alone on my porch, I admitted something to myself I had been avoiding. I was falling in love with her. Not in a loud or reckless way. In a quiet, steady way, the kind that feels deeper because it does not rush. And that terrified me. I worried about my age, about what she might see when she really looked at me. I worried I was just a safe place for her, a calm pause in a busy life. I told myself to slow down, to enjoy what this was without asking for more. But weeks passed, and we kept drifting closer. 2 meetings a week turned into 3. Our conversations stretched longer. Silences stopped feeling empty. They felt full. I started imagining her in my life in ways I had not imagined anyone since my wife. That scared me more than losing her ever could. One day, my daughter called. She told me I sounded different, happier. She asked if I was seeing someone. I tried to brush it off, but she heard it anyway. I admitted there was someone named Marissa. She told me she would like to meet her someday if it became something real. That night, I stood in front of my mirror longer than I had in decades. I knew what I wanted to do, and I was more nervous than I had been at 20. I wanted to ask her out, a real date. When I picked her up that Thursday, I wore clean clothes, real shoes, and even washed the car. She smiled when she opened the door and told me I looked nice. I told her I had made a reservation, a real one. She accepted with a soft smile that made my knees feel weak. Dinner was quiet and warm. No pressure, no pretending. Just 2 people sharing a meal and laughing about old stories. When we walked back to the car under the stars, I knew I could not keep pretending this was just friendship. I told her I loved her. The words came out calm but heavy, honest. I told her I knew I was older, that she deserved more. Someone younger, someone with a long future. She did not look away. She took my hand and told me she did not care about my age. She cared about how I made her feel, safe, seen, alive. We did not kiss. We just stood there holding hands, and it meant more than anything else ever had. After that night, everything shifted. We were not pretending anymore. We were together in the way that matters. Slowly. Carefully. Honestly. A couple weeks later, she invited me to her house for dinner. It was warm and full of books and plants. She cooked a meal that felt like it belonged in a magazine. Afterward, she fell asleep against my shoulder while we watched a movie. It was peaceful in a way I had not felt in years. We started staying over at each other's places, leaving notes, sharing mornings. Her laughter filled my house in places that had been quiet for too long. The walls felt different, like they were breathing again. One Sunday afternoon, sitting on my porch, she told me she loved being there. With me. With the quiet. She asked if it would be crazy to spend more time together, to move in. I felt my throat tighten. Not from fear. From gratitude. I told her I would love that if it was truly what she wanted. She said it was. And in that moment, I realized something important. My life was not over when I thought it was. It had just been waiting. We decided not to rush anything. Marissa did not move in right away. Instead, she started bringing small pieces of her life into mine. A box of books one week, a plant the next. A few clothes hung carefully in the closet. Every little thing felt bigger than it was, not because of the space it took up, but because of what it meant. The first time she carried a box into my house, I stood there watching her like it was something fragile, not the box, the moment. Letting someone back into your life after loss is not simple. It is not about furniture or drawers. It is about opening parts of yourself you thought were sealed forever. She laughed when she saw how empty my bathroom was. One toothbrush. A few razors. That was it. She took the left side of the sink without asking, hung a towel. Just like that, the space shifted. The house felt warmer. Lived in. Awake. She put a small plant on the kitchen window and a photo on the hallway wall. Nothing loud, nothing dramatic. Just enough to change the air. I had not realized how still the house had been until it started moving again. Then came the part one had been dreading. My kids. I invited them all over for dinner. My son, his wife, the kids. My daughter flew in the next weekend. I told Marissa I understood if she was nervous. She smiled and said she was, but she wanted to be there. We sat around the dining table I had not used properly in years. I cooked pasta and meatballs. Marissa brought garlic bread and a salad everyone loved. At first, the room felt tight. Polite. My son watched closely. My daughter asked questions, gently at first. Marissa answered easily. About her work, about where she grew up, about books she loved. The tension softened. The kids laughed when she made silly voices. By the end of the night, the room felt full in a way I had not felt since my wife passed. My daughter pulled me aside in the kitchen and told me I seemed lighter, happier. Later, my son stayed back to help clean up. After a long silence, he told me he understood, that she was good for me. I had to turn away for a moment because my eyes burned. That night, Marissa asked me if it had been hard. I told her it was, but in the best way. She told me I was more than okay. I believed her. A few weeks later, her lease ended, and she moved in fully. No big announcement, no celebration. Just a quiet decision between two people who knew what they were choosing. Life together felt simple. Morning coffee, shared meals, notes on the counter. She worked from home some days. I fixed things around the house while she hummed in the kitchen. It was not loud happiness. It was steady. One afternoon, my grandson asked if Marissa was my girlfriend. I laughed and told him something like that. We never labeled it. We did not need to. We talked about the future sometimes. Health, travel. The things that matter more when time feels different. I was honest with her about my fears. About aging. About not knowing how much time I had left. She listened and told me she was not afraid. She told me none of us get guarantees. One evening on the porch, I told her I thought my story had ended years ago. She reached over and took my hand the same way she had that night in the parking lot. Quiet. Certain. Months later, we visited her old house together. She handed me the keys and said she was ready to let it go. A young couple moved in later with a baby. She smiled when she saw the stroller. Her life was here now. My kids embraced her fully. The grandkids adored her. She never tried to replace my wife. She never asked me to forget. She respected the past while building something new, and that mattered more than she knew. I watched my life take a shape I never expected, one that felt full again. one that felt chosen. And every morning when I woke up beside her, I knew I had not been too late. I had arrived exactly when I was meant to. It has been a year since Marissa moved in, and time does not feel the same anymore. When I was working, life moved by calendars and clocks. Now the days stretch and shrink all at once. I wake up beside her, and before I know it, the morning is gone. We drink coffee at the kitchen table, talk about nothing, and suddenly it is afternoon. Then the sun starts to set, and we are on the couch watching shows we have already seen more than once. But it never feels boring. It never feels empty. She made this house feel alive again, not just with the plants on the windows or the pictures on the walls, but with her presence, her laughter, the way something always seems to be baking, the quiet talks at night when the rest of the world feels far away. She never tried to replace my late wife. She never asked me to forget. She understood that love does not erase what came before, it builds on it. That alone made me love her more. One evening, we were sitting on the front porch, watching the sun sink behind the trees. The air was calm. I told her something I had never said out loud before. I told her I thought my story was over, that I believed the best parts of my life were behind me. She looked at me without saying a word and took my hand, the same way she did the night I told her I loved her, quiet, steady, certain. And in that moment I knew the second half of my life had been waiting patiently for me to catch up. A few months later we went back to her old house. She had not been there since moving out. The rooms felt like memories instead of spaces. She handed me the keys and said she was ready to move forward. We rented it out to a young couple expecting their first child. When Marissa saw the stroller on the porch weeks later, she smiled. Her life was here now. My kids fully accepted her. That surprised me at first. I worried they might feel like I was replacing their mother. But they saw what I could not at first, that I deserved happiness again. My daughter told me once that I was the best version of myself when I was in love. Hearing that stayed with me. The grandkids adore her. They call her Miss Marissa, just like she wanted. She plays cards with them, sneaks them extra cookies, and listens to them like they are the most important people in the world. Watching that fills me with something close to peace. We never married. We never felt the need to. No big plans, no labels. We just chose each other. Every day. That felt like enough. There are moments I still worry. About health. About time. About what the future might bring. You do not reach your 60s without thinking about those things. I was honest with her from the beginning. She was honest too. She told me I was never part of her plan. Then she smiled and said maybe the plan was not that good to begin with. We talk about small dreams now. A road trip up the coast. Or maybe just more slow mornings and quiet Sundays. Grilled cheese for dinner when neither of us feels like cooking. And I am okay with that. Because I have learned something important. The best parts of life do not always happen when you are young. Sometimes they show up quietly in the grocery store, disguised as an apology and a cup of coffee. I do not know how many years I have left. None of us do. But I know this. I am not waiting anymore. I am not living in regret or wondering what could have been. I am living in the present, holding the hand of a woman who looked at me and said she did not care that I was over 60, and then proved it every single day. This is my second half. Not louder, not faster, just fuller.